Hello, everybody. What are we today? Thursday. Welcome to another episode of Chalkboard Chats. My name is Henry. I'm a life coach for teachers. And on this channel, we discuss all things teaching and everything in support of teachers. And today I wanted to share with you some personal things that happened with me as a teacher. So I'm a part-time English teacher. And I've been having not so great of a time recently. And I wanted to share with you how I go in and out of these phases because I find it very useful to share this with people. And people have come up to me and said, "This is amazing. I wish there were more conversations like this." So I call it like the reoccurring unease. It's not that I necessarily am very unhappy or I'm very worried or anxious. It is just that every now and then I wonder if I'm like a good teacher. And I've caught myself this week thinking it again, and I'll share with you some of the reasons why. Um, I was wondering if my classes are boring. I've had some parent-teacher meetings a couple of weeks ago, and some of the parents shared that the kids didn't want to go to the classes because they thought the class was boring. And at the time, it didn't really register with me. I was just very empathetic. I was like, yeah, when I was 7 years old, I much rather play outside than sit in a classroom for 2 hours after school. So you've sat in the classroom for what, 6 to 8 hours already, and then you go home, quickly change, and then go into another classroom for 2 hours. So at the time when we've had this conversation, it didn't really do anything to me personally. But then this week, somebody in my class said, "I'm bored." And all of a sudden I was like, are my classes boring? Am I a bad teacher? And then I was sick a couple of weeks ago, and my colleague covered a class for me. And the students keep talking about him, how amazing of a teacher he is, and how much fun they had. And they keep, waving at him, which usually I'm like, oh, great. My students know more teachers than just me. And this week, all of a sudden, I took it as like, wait, they like him better than me? Is he a better teacher? How am I compared to him? The TA, the teaching assistant, described an activity, and it. I felt like, oh my God, should I put more effort into finding, more and fun games, and how do I compare to other teachers? Am I an okay teacher? Am I a bad teacher? And then last week, there's one class that I'm really struggling with. And I think this class isn't going so well. It's a group of teenagers. I've taught them, I think, like 2 years ago now. And then my schedule changed, so I didn't teach them. And now they are proper teenagers. So they are not interested in learning the English language. They are very occupied by, teenage stuff. So who's the funniest in class? Who can say the rudest things and get away with it? I think there's like a couple of love-hate relationships going on where the girls are like, "Ugh, this boy," and some of the boys are like, "Ugh, this girl." But then they also keep looking at each other. And I don't know, this week, all of a sudden, I was like, wait a minute. Am I doubting myself? Am I wondering if I'm a good teacher or not? And yes, I was. So this happens every now and then, and I don't make it mean something about me. It's just something that comes back in waves. It doesn't completely go away when I don't think this way, but then when it comes back, I'm like, oh yeah, I have this phase again. What I do notice is that this week and last week are 2 weeks without any extra admin, without any paperwork. So my mind is not occupied by that. And I think because it's not occupied by any of the paperwork, all of a sudden it's like, hey, we haven't thought about us in a while. So, so yes, every now and then this comes back and it's annoying. And when I caught myself that these were just some thoughts that I was thinking, I was like, wait a second, I don't need to think this. I don't need to worry whether or not I'm a good teacher. I have got some things in place that get me back to peace. It doesn't get me back to, oh my God, everything is amazing, but it kind of like redirects you away from, let's say, a part of town where you don't want to be. Doesn't mean that you found your destination, but at least you're like on a better way, on in like a better direction. And here are the thoughts, and I want to share them with you. And you can adopt them, try them on, and see how they fit. I'm of the firm belief that I am a good and bad teacher. I am a good and bad teacher, depending on who you ask. If you ask me on a good day, I'm a great teacher. If you ask me on a bad day, I'm like, I am just a teacher. If you ask some of my students who love to go to school, they think I'm amazing. And if you ask some of the students who are like, don't want to do this, they would say I'm a bad teacher. Same with management. I've had one manager say, not even say, he didn't say it. He implied that I wasn't a great teacher. And I've had a manager who said that I was a great teacher. So, what to believe? Well, what gives me a lot of peace, and I believe it firmly, and I can always come back to it, is I am a good and bad teacher. The next one is what and if students learn isn't up to me, because I am not in control of their learning. I am in control of what is taught. So I have say over what is taught in class. I can teach it in a very advanced way. I can teach it in a very simplified way. I can teach it over and over and over. I can change subjects. I can do different things. Whether or not a student learns isn't up to me. I do not have the control over that. Nobody has. Nor do you want to. That is not up to any other blah, 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 any other person than themselves. Because in order to learn, you need to pay attention, and the attention needs to be given. It's not something tangible that you can grasp. It's not something that you can take. It is something that you can direct, but only with so much control. I can direct their attention, but I cannot hold it. It isn't something that I can grasp. It is something that they need to give freely. And if they don't give it freely, there's nothing that I can do. There's nothing that I can change. I can ask for it, I can wish it, I can want it, I can try to demand it, but it is always something that needs to be given willingly. So therefore, the learning isn't in my control at all. I control what is taught, and that is basically the edge of my control. Whether or not somebody else learns isn't up to me. The only thing I do in class is I illuminate the path of their learning journey. I stand to the side, they're on the path going from here to where they want to be. So they go from, let's say, A1 English language to fluent and well-versed C1, let's say. And I am just standing there next to the path, illuminating some of the obstacles. And I tell them, well, if you go this way, then you keep making the same mistakes. So step back, change some of the directions, and then you're off into the right direction. That is all we can do. Whether or not a student is having fun isn't really up to us. Whether or not a student is learning isn't up to us. we don't control all of these things. We don't control their emotions. We don't control their actions. We don't control their thoughts. Therefore, I am not responsible. I am not able to respond. And it is not something that I can steer. Same with like classroom management. There were some students who just have a very difficult time being a student in class and following the rules. Some students, they are just amazing and they are so easy to teach because they don't have any issue with sitting in a chair. And some students just don't. And it is sometimes a little bit difficult to not take that personally, not take that as a personal failure or a professional failure when a student is quote unquote misbehaving. Yesterday, this one student who always cared about all the stickers and the stars and the rewards just stopped out of nowhere. And I told him to not not shimmy with a chair constantly. And I told him 3 times, and I put all the classroom management systems in place. Told him that he was going to lose a star and he was not going to get a sticker. And he was like, ah. I was like, what is happening? Well, what is happening is that I am finding the edges of my control, meaning I can say words and the student is still in full control of their actions. So if they decide to shimmy around with a chair, they will shimmy around with the chair. And it has nothing to do with me professionally as a teacher. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad teacher. Doesn't mean that I don't have control over my students, because guess what? We don't. And sometimes it's a little bit frustrating to see that it's so normalized as if we are the one controlling our students. We don't control our students. We don't control other people. That's not how life works. So to get back into peace and to get back into, wait a second, I can stop worrying. I can stop feeling this weird unease about my job because I am a good and a bad teacher. Sometimes I'm amazing. Sometimes I just am terrible. What is in my control is what I teach. Whether or not a student learned isn't in my control. Therefore, I can put all my focus on the teaching and I can support and give love and send all the good vibes out for them to learn. But that is all I can do. And this gives me such a sense of peace and comfort that from that place, I can decide, wait a second, I'm actually a great teacher. I'm actually a really good teacher because I make sure that when the students learn some of the new language, the space they do it in is safe. I don't call them out on their mistakes. I don't put them on the spot with difficult questions. I create a safe space for them to experiment with the new language. I incorporate different resources. I sometimes do videos, sometimes I do books, sometimes I do a little play, sometimes I do a little story. Sometimes we just go by the pictures. And it is diverse enough for everybody to have a chance to learn. Therefore, I am a great teacher. And I really can encourage you to decide the same or something similar for yourself. Give yourself a couple of sentences that anchor you back into, wait a second, I'm not that bad. And especially if you're like hitting some roadblocks professionally, um, it is very useful to have a place where you can kind of mentally land, where you find some peace and some, what do I say, like determination or confidence. For me, it's a little bit more confident when I think I'm a good and bad teacher. It gives me some peace and some confidence to think, wait a second, I'm actually a good teacher. I'm great. Students are very lucky to have me in class. And it makes you very resilient for all the obstacles and all the adversity that we're facing in and outside of the classroom. So I can highly recommend making your own sentences, but you can adopt these, the ones that I've shared with you just now, and see how they fit on. See if they feel good, if you can believe them, and how they influence you showing up into the classroom. All right, that's what I have for you today. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon. Bye.